Hello, I'm Christina Brown. This is Our Take on Arise TV, a talk show focused on the topics and stories related and of interest to women. And joining me today as guest host is a dedicated advocate of women, Soleil Abrams. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Soleil, you are an author, you are an award-winning writer, but also the founder of truthinreality.org. Tell me just a little bit about that organization.
Sure. Truth in Reality is a grassroots media advocacy organization committed to changing the way that Black women and interpersonal violence are portrayed on reality television. And
we had you last week as part of the conversation about that very fact, about the way Black women are portrayed in reality television. And one of the points that you so eloquently brought up is the fact that what we see on television does really translate into real life, not only for the characters involved in these non-scripted shows, but for those of us watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when you think, a friend of mine was traveling to, I think it was Thailand, and said that they had a Black woman and had two people come up to her and her friend and start talking about basketball wives. Wow. And that was their cultural point of reference for African American women.
Frightening.
Internationally now.
Yes, yes indeed. Well, since I know you all too well to not be a stranger to voicing your opinions, guest host here today, feel free to jump in. We've got a lot to talk about on today's show. And topping our daily take stories, anti-apartheid, women and civil rights leader Nelson Mandela has taken a turn for the worse. He is now listed in critical condition. Mandela's daughter Zenani and South Africa's defense minister were seen arriving at the Mediclinic Heart Hospital where the 94-year-old is being treated. Arise News correspondent Shahan Ramkisoon joins us live from Pretoria with the latest on Mandela's condition. Hi there, Shahan. What more can you tell us about how Mandela is doing?
Well, no new information has been given by the South African presidency regarding Nelson Mandela's condition in hospital. The presidency only released their statement last night, late last night, in fact, saying that Nelson Mandela was in a critical condition, that President Jacob Zuma did visit him around 8 p.m. Central Africa time and found that he was unconscious and could not speak to him at that moment, but he did get a report from doctors, and that he was told, rather, that the former statesman is in a critical condition. But no new information coming through. The presidency said that they would update the media as they see fit, and up until now, they have not done so.
Shahan, what can you tell us in terms of the turnout of people who are perhaps outside the hospital or even outside the home of Mandela, just in terms of the people of South Africa? What are they doing at this time, given this latest bit of news about Mandela's health?
Well, I think it's safe to say that South Africans are truly anxious at this stage. This is the first time that we have heard that Nelson Mandela is in a critical condition. People have made their way to the hospital throughout the morning, afternoon and evening. It's quite cold here in Pretoria, and people have come out in their PJs even just to get a chance to come to the hospital and write messages of support for Nelson Mandela and stick it on the wall outside the hospital. We've also been to his old home in Vilakazi Street in Soweto and saw that people did visit there as well today to get some sense of a closeness to Nelson Mandela, just to be where he was many, many years ago. People are going out and making that effort while he is alive to say that they did go there to pay tribute.
All right, Shahan Ramkisoon joining us live from Pretoria. Thank you for the latest as we continue our coverage of the health and well-being of Nelson Mandela. Of course, our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. Thank you so much. And Our Take continues coverage of the killing of Trayvon Martin, the trial of George Zimmerman. It began today with opening statements in Florida, the Florida courtroom this morning, where Zimmerman faces second-degree murder charges for the shooting death of unarmed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. Legal analyst B.J. Bernstein joins us. Now, the jurors in this case will spend the rest of the trial sequestered in a hotel. It could take months, or at least a month, for both sides to present their case, but the defense wasn't even able to finish presenting their opening statement before they broke for lunch.
It's still going. They're going to come back for lunch, which is highly unusual. I've tried over 150 jury trials, and never am I interrupted by lunch. You usually try to get your statements in But this morning's been very interesting in terms of, I think it sets the tone for the trial. The prosecutor used very strong language at the beginning. Literally used the F-bomb.
Yeah. He didn't hold back
He
at
did
all.
not hold back, and that captures the emotion of what happened and why this country has been, mesmerized by an outrage, honestly, about what had happened, about this young man dying. At the same time, the defense comes back in and does a very methodic, possibly too long opening, but they're trying to diminish the drama of the case with what they contend are facts that would support an acquittal. So it's going to be interesting.
When we heard from the prosecutor, we heard from John Guy. This is not the lead prosecutor. In the same way, we also didn't hear from the lead defense attorney, Don West. Is there anything to be made out of that strategy in terms of who came first in terms of presenting the case?
Well, I think it's just a matter of they're splitting it between two lawyers. It is a fairly large case. There's a lot of evidence, and it's a very high profile. It's one of the most high profile cases, I think, in the United States this year in terms of trial. And so I think they just split it up. I would say sometimes, opening's really important. I actually always try to do both my opening and closing because I want that continuity. But it's a style thing coupled with, I think, with a high profile case, everybody wants their say, and there may be a little jockeying around for the lawyers to have their time in court.
It's so incredibly polarizing, the trial, and to see how many people still blame the victim for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's just been mind-boggling to see the hate on Twitter.
And Twitter's been very active. And what's interesting about social activity on this case, and particularly the African American community, originally at the beginning of this case, it was not clear there was going to be an arrest. There was not an arrest of George Zimmerman. Only when Natalie Jackson was the first family attorney in Florida, know her well, and Ben Crump, who also represents the Martin family, let the country know more about it. Then we saw a shift from a small police department not issuing an arrest warrant immediately to later getting this indictment and shifting the course of the case. The problem with that is that going to haunt this case till the end and be part of the reason why there could be an acquittal here?
When the jury was selected, one of the big headlines out of that was the fact that it was an all-female jury, and then second to that, the fact that there were no African Americans as part of those 6 jurors. I believe there is someone who's identified as Hispanic as one of the alternate jurors. The case has been made, at least by some people, that in many ways this case is about the women, if you will. Meaning the special prosecutor, Angela Corey, the judge, Deborah Nelson, one of the key witnesses who was apparently on the phone with Trayvon at the time that he was being then followed by George Zimmerman. Given the style that we saw from both the prosecutor and the defense, is there anything that indicates that style was tailor-made for an all-female jury?
I don't think so. And I think one of it is, it's so peculiar. Again, I keep already tweeting about all these new things I'm seeing with this trial. I've never had an all-female jury. And I guess I would feel like, obviously, as a female trial lawyer, that I could communicate with that jury.
Sure.
But the truth is, there are so many facts, there's so many circumstances in this case that it goes beyond gender. And so I'm kind of the pool here that the process of selecting a jury isn't selecting a jury. It's deselection. The people who knew the most about the case, the people who had Facebooked about their opinions one way or the other, the people who feel strongly about firearms and the stand your ground law in Florida, which is going to be a huge part of this trial, are the ones that get eliminated, and then you have who's left. So I think they did not necessarily tailor it. I think it's just a matter of the style of the lawyers at this point. And again, opening is a roadmap, and the meat of this case is going to be during the testimony.
Certainly.
It'll be very interesting to see what the perspectives are for the members of the jury. I grew up in Central Florida, very familiar with the culture there. And granted, this was 20 years ago, but from what I've seen on Facebook, because you connect with your friends from way back when, it doesn't, there's a lot of conservative folks, a lot of people who aren't as necessarily progressive in their thinking as those of us in the North.
Well, in the stand your ground law, in of itself, the fact that that law exists, it doesn't exist in every state, and that is a very pro-gun law that gives you the right, according to their law, to stand your ground and not retreat. Usually in self-defense cases in many states, it is you should try to retreat. So not having that retreat, big difference.
Well, you mentioned the Stand Your Ground case, and I believe it's about 27 states or so that have something similar. And there has been a lot of question as to whether or not the defense didn't move forward with its strategy in terms of making this case about Stand Your Ground. What is it from the defense opening statements that we clearly know weren't finished? What is it that give you an indication as to how they're laying out their plan moving forward?
Two things. One, what you just said, the stand your ground decision of not letting a judge decide that issue, but letting a jury decide that issue. So it is very much in play, and strategically, I think that was a smart move on their part. Number two, what the defense has done is in the detail, by playing already the 911 tape over and over and over, you start to take the emotion out, because the first time you hear a person dying on tape, it's very emotional. If you hear it over and over and over, it becomes easier to potentially dissect it in a conversational way and not get caught up in the emotion. And that, I think, is what they're trying to do.
And of course, there's a huge ruling by Judge Deborah Nelson about the 911 tapes and allowing expert witnesses to be part of the trial and determine who was saying what and when.
She's not going to allow that.
She's not going to allow it.
And she's not going to allow that, which honestly was, I know a lot of people may disagree, but under the law, that science isn't ready yet. They'll be able to hear that tape. The Trayvon's family will be able to testify, that sounds like my son. But an expert coming in saying who it sounded like with enhancements, that won't be allowed.
All right. Well, BJ, we have to keep you around because we have some other court cases.
It's law week this week.
It really is. The Supreme Court has 11 cases, including the term's highest profile matters, to resolve before the justices take off for the summer. They'll tackle gay marriage. In fact, 2 cases. One is a challenge to California's constitutional ban on same-sex marriage. The other is an attack on a provision of federal law that prevents legally married gay couples from receiving a range of tax, health, and pension benefits. Also, earlier today, the U.S. Supreme Court came to a compromise decision on affirmative action. The High Court instructed a federal appeals court to review more critically a University of Texas affirmative action program. Now, this amounts to somewhat of a setback for those advocating racial preferences. Observers are calling the 7-1 ruling in Fisher versus University of Texas at Austin a compromise. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the only judge to oppose this decision. And of course, we are still awaiting the High Court's ruling on voting rights. A town near Birmingham, Alabama, is looking for the Supreme Court to end a system in place for half a century whereby certain state and local governments with a history of discrimination in the electoral process must obtain prior approval of any modifications in how they stage elections. So really a lot going on when it comes to the Supreme Court having huge ramifications across the nation. But let's talk first about affirmative action. They took the case in the first place. So isn't that an indication they were ready to rule on it?
Someone who accepted it, because it's like by committee of who decides what to accept. And then when it gets there, then the controversy obviously unfolded between the justices not to go ahead and decide, because they each meet, they hear the arguments, they work on their ideas, and they keep meeting to with one another and start to realize that, and it sounds like here, the standard of which you review, which is boring to anyone but the law geeks like me.
All right, well, explain it to us.
The law geeks understand that one of the first things you do in any case that goes up on appeal is, what is the standard of review? It's not just we look at it and say yes or no, but what legal standard, how much evidence? Like when you think at the trial level, if it's beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal case, or if it's a preponderance, just 51% in a civil case, that's the level of review. On an appellate standards, there's different little steps that you go, and the highest one is strict scrutiny. And that's what the U.S. Supreme Court said back to the lower Circuit Court, which is a group of states in the federal circuit there, that they need to use strict scrutiny in order to really look at this. Now, what that means down the road means that, yes, it will probably travel back up to the Supremes, but interestingly, time could end up being either side's friend or foe in this, because it could be a different court by then.
Yeah.
You never know. It'll take another year to 2 years before we get back potentially to the Supreme Court deciding this. A lot could happen. So if for those who think that they're worried about affirmative action going away, possibly time may be on their side.
So is this a matter of finding now the right scenario, just the right case, because clearly this wasn't it? Do you start from the beginning?
No, I think this will still be the case. It's just going to be after they review using that standard, there will be some opinion, someone will appeal it, and chances are the Supreme Court will accept that again and look at it.
And if you're looking in your fortune teller hand, how much time then do opponents and I guess supporters of this have on their hands?
It's going to take a while, because it'll go back down to the courts. Each side will rebrief. The documents of where you put in writing to the courts your argument will be redone, taking in mind what the Supreme Court said, and also looking at, for instance, apparently Justice Thomas was very, very vocal. He doesn't speak at the court, but he speaks in writing very strongly that he is against affirmative action. So you're going to watch the lawyers down below now take into account these what little blips of thought from the justices in their turn down of making a decision and trying to tailor their argument.
And they have plenty of reading to do because it was a 7-1 decision.
Exactly.
It's amazing that Clarence Thomas is against affirmative action when he himself benefited from that. It's like, okay, this is good for me, but not for you. We're good.
He's an interesting justice, and obviously one who doesn't speak much, but he has very strong opinions when you read what he has to say. And he's from my home state of Georgia. Georgia's on our mind these days a lot with between him and Paula Deen. Obviously, we're expressing opinions now.
And speaking of Paula Deen and the good old South, as she would probably refer to it, an old interview with the former Food Network chef Paula Deen is finding new life. Take a listen.
I have a young man in my life, and his name is Hollis Johnson. And he's black as that board.
Here, isn't he here?
Stand up, Hollis.
Is Hollis here?
Come
Hi,
out here, Hollis. We can't see you standing against that dark board.
Welcome to New York City. All right.
Welcome to the South.
Hi, Hollis.
But you know, I tell people, this is my son by another father.
Yeah.
I mean, I
There's
love
some
this
breaking
young
news.
man. I would travel to hell with him, and I know I can trust him with my life, and color ain't got nothing to do with it.
Where do you begin with that one? I'll let you, Miss Southern Belle, Georgia. BJ, what was that?
When she says welcome to the South, that is a very old South. There are vestiges of that South. I see it from when people talk. I understand where it came from, and when you read the notes in Georgia newspapers now and the discussion about all this, there are many coming to her defense. But those of us who know better know that that South is gone, and if it's not gone, it must be. And for her to say it, and just now, it almost reiterates the controversy, number one, and number two, reminding all of us that the comments that's caused her a problem is a result of a lawsuit that's alleged something even more than just saying those words, but creating an environment that is hostile for employees to be there and to work there and to feel comfortable there. And so that take out the cute, sweet Southern woman who makes us macaroni and cheese that will kill us 12 times over. She has laced in it something much more poisonous to our souls, which is keeping those lines in place. And I think in her deposition also where allegedly she talks about wistfully wanting a party where everyone is dressed like, and that all the waiters are African American and white starched shirts like the Old South. You know, that is disturbing.
But this isn't even, for Paula, her attitude, when you say vestige, I mean, she is sorry because she got caught. There's no way that anyone can tell me that this was something, like you said, it's something much more, it's much darker. It's something that's much more all-encompassing. And I mean, my experience speaking at schools in the South, Grambling State University, Tuskegee, I mean, her attitude, I don't think, is that unusual. It's just the fact that she got caught on tape in the middle of of a lawsuit.
And lost her job.
In which apparently she's got tremendous support. Like, you have 200,000 people on Facebook saying that they're not going to watch the Food Network until she gets her show back.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of the scary part for a lot of us anyway, who don't see that exchange as humorous or don't see that language as excusable.
And the thing about her, though, and I think what's different and has people more outraged, is she is a product of the media. She does know that her words carry weight. She is, you know, it's one thing to live and die and make mistakes of what you say in your private time, but when you are out there in the front, then you need to take a step back and think about it, and be a role model for others. And she could have been, and she didn't do that,
But
and that's what's
one
distressing.
One of the side effects of fame is hubris, is that you think you're bigger than the rules of life, and you start to, you know, you have so many sycophants around you that are, you know, you're living in your bubble world, and anything goes. No one's, as long as they're getting a check, they're not going to say, you know, you really shouldn't say that word, Paula. No, because Paula's the one that's signing the checks at the end of the day, so whatever you say, fine. As long as checks are coming, great.
Well, BJ Bernstein, thank you so much for all of your insight.
Thank you. A timely week to be in New York,
it
away
most
from the
certainly
South.
is. You came to talk about Trayvon, but I couldn't let you go. Now with all those other court cases, thank you again. And you are watching Our Take. We are on Facebook and Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter at Our Take Arise TV. And remember to like and leave comments on our Facebook page at Our Take on Arise TV. You are watching Our Take.
Bigger, stronger, and more domineering than any other. Elephants are the centers of the animal kingdom, but unfortunately today, they're under attack. Tens of thousands are being killed each year just for their ivory. So please support conservation and never buy products made from ivory, because when the buying stops, the killing can too.
Ndingululu Chumsila, mna ndingumama owasindayo kwi-cancer, i-cancer eyayisisibelekweni. Thina bantu, imistake yethu apha ikhoyo, kwawuthiwa umntu une-cancer, simjongela uba laa mntu ngomso uzosweleka. Andizange ndibe nabunzima kakhulu, ngoba into ebangela uba nditsho, eyam yabhaqwa msinyane, ngoba into enyanzelekileyo kuba ube nethemba xa kuthiwa unento. Isapoti endayifumanayo kumyeni wam, kubantwana bam, nefemeli yam yonke. Eyona nto ndandinayo mna entliziyweni yam kukuba okusalayo nam ndizophila ndifane nabanye abantu.
Lo myalezo uphathelwe i-JSI and Livestrong Cancer Anti-Stigma Initiative.
I wonder why anyone would do that to themselves. We all need air to breathe, to live, and so does the earth. But we're choking it with plastic bags. Let's stop using plastic bags and give the earth a chance to breathe. Refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle.
If women ruled the world, just how different would it be? Well, this year's Forbes list of the world's most powerful women includes 11 black women. And to tell us something about them is Catherine Griscom, who is a corporate diversity expert, vice president of the Catalyst Initiative and PhD, who is here with us in studio. 11 black women. Let me just name a few of them. Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Ursula Burns, Beyonce Knowles, Rosalind Brewer, president and CEO of Sam's Club. And Catherine, what you look at and what you examine is how corporations are creating an environment for women in general.
Yes.
And women of color. Well, how are they doing?
Well, they could be doing a little bit better. I would be so pleased if there were more black women CEOs on that list.
Yes.
They clearly are making strides. But in Catalyst Research, when we've asked about the effectiveness of diversity and inclusion policies, we find that there's a real gap, that women of color tend to find these programs much less effective than do white women. And in particular, even with all the organizations that are implementing these programs, we find that over a third of the women of color that we survey say that these programs are not doing a good job in terms of eradicating subtle gender bias or subtle racial bias, and those are still real barriers.
In this list of 11, there are actually 2 of the women on this list are CEOs of U.S. public companies. Catherine, is there any connection as to when you have a person of color, a female person of color for the purpose of this conversation, is there any connection to what the overall makeup of the company then looks like?
Well, I think it's not really a cause and effect, but it's more that if a woman of color is able to rise to the C-suite, to a CEO position, the company is already fairly sophisticated, fairly inclusive, and has a pretty good handle on its talent management. I mean, of course, she can then be a role model for aspiring younger women of color, which in the long run certainly could have some effect. In fact, when we've asked women of color about the barriers to advancement, lack of role models is up there at the top. So when women of color can look up and see themselves reflected at those high levels, it's very encouraging.
You talk about lack of role models. Does that also translate to lack of mentors then? People that are kind of helping them along their path.
Yes, and actually even more important than mentors, we find that women of color lack sponsors. A mentor is someone who helps you with your career, gives you advice, but a sponsor is someone who's at a very high level within the corporation or firm and can actively advocate for you. They're the kind of people who are behind closed doors deciding who's going to be on a succession slate, and sponsors will aggressively advocate for their people so they can actually help women of color get those high visibility assignments, can get them into senior vice president positions. But it's hard to find sponsors. It's hard to really find sponsors to devote themselves to someone who looks differently from them.
And why do you, I mean, what do you think is the barrier to that? I mean, is it because the majority of the sponsors would be white men?
Well, like prefers like. I mean, we've seen that for years in Catalyst Research as well as other research. But it is encouraging that there are organizations that are looking forward and are actively encouraging their senior leaders to be sponsors and to be mentors. And I think a good place to start is formal mentorship programs. So there are several formal mentorship programs in the United States, and what's best about them is when they actively encourage the mentor to transition into becoming a sponsor, to really fight for their mentees, to assess their talent fairly, and to really be comfortable with someone from a different background.
I want to just briefly go through the list and have you comment on the back end. Michelle Obama came in as at number 4, the First Lady, who Forbes credits with using her, her favorability rating, 67%, where her husband's at 20%, using that to leverage the Let's Move campaign, really galvanizing the movement around fitness and health. Oprah Winfrey, I'm pretty sure you know who that is, right? We've never heard of her.
Yes.
Oprah Winfrey, billionaire, came in at number 13. 14. Ursula Burns, though, chairman and CEO of Xerox, began her career at the company as an intern in 1980 and has remained dedicated to its progress. She ranks number 14 on the list. Beyonce Knowles Carter, also known as Sasha Fierce or Miss Bay, ranks number 17 on the list. According to my reports, she's already generated $40 million so far this year. Not bad. Rosalind Brewer, though, president and CEO of Sam's Club, Walmart stores. She used her position to expand Wi-Fi in the United States, Brazil, and China, and also to encourage cell phone shopping. She comes in at number 44. Malawi's first female president, Joyce Banda, ranking number 47 on the list, tackled her country's financial issues while addressing social woes. And then there's Eartharin Cousin, the executive director of the United Nations World Food Program. She has led the feeding of 97 million people around the world. She comes in at 49. Dr. Helene Gale, 57. She's 57 years old. Her ranking is number 68. She is the president and CEO of CARE, one of the world's most profitable non-profit organizations. And then Ngozi Okonjo Iweala, and I hope I pronounced her name correctly because she is due that respect and honor. Nigeria's current Minister of Finance, she ranks number 83 on the list. Risa Levizo Murray, president and CEO of the Robert Wood Foundation, oversees more than $360 million in grants. She ranks 84 on the list. And then Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, undoubtedly an icon, of course, Liberia's president, Africa's first female head of state, also recipient, you might recall, of the Nobel Peace Prize. She ranks 87 on the list. I say congratulations, first of all, to all of those women, but as you've already made mention, too few are there because of their rankings within corporations. So I'm assuming for you, you're not entirely shocked by this.
I'm not shocked at all. But I think one good thing about that list is that it is multi-sector. So there are role models for young women who may be pursuing careers in government. And another thing that's good about it is that it is global, because business and the economy obviously is becoming much, much more global than, say, 20 or 30 years ago.
All right, Catherine Griscom, thank you so much for joining us from the Catalyst Initiative, corporate diversity expert. I have no doubt that we will be speaking to you again. There will be other lists in which we will want to profile other women of color as well. So once again, thank you very much for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
And you are watching Our Take.
24 seconds. That's what you get to make it happen. You can run the break, find the big man inside, or swing it out and hit the three. Grab the board, and you get a new 24, just like that. But unfortunately, for endangered animals, there's no reset. Many are now facing extinction, and when their clock runs out, they're gone forever. So please, support conservation, and never buy products made from these animals. There's no more time to waste.
When was the last time you drank one of these? Last week? Today? Right now? Did you know how much sugar was in that sweetened soda or entire bottle of a sports drink? Read the label next time. In this can of soda, there are 39 grams of sugar. That means 10 sugar packets or 10 teaspoons of sugar. The American Heart Association recommends that preteens and teens don't intentionally add more than 32 grams of sugar, which is 8 sugar packets or 8 teaspoons, to their diets per day. On average, kids ages 8 to 14 consume between 21 and 33 teaspoons of sugar per day. That's 3 or 4 times the limit. Yikes! Choose water, seltzer, milk, or unsweetened tea instead. You can control your sugar intake. Choose what you consume.
I came to Africa to see this, but I also found this. Every year, thousands of elephants are being killed just for their tusk. If we buy ivory, we're just helping the poacher. So please, don't do it. because when the buying stops, the killing can too.
One New York-based ice cream business is making a huge impact, one sweet scoop at a time in Rwanda. To help explain all of this, Alexis Meeson of Brooklyn's Blue Marble Ice Cream is here to tell us all about it. Also joining us from Rwanda is Odile Gakire Katise, also known as Kiki, who was actually the visionary behind Sweet Dreams, an ice cream parlor in Butare, Rwanda. Kiki, can you hear me? All right. Well, we'll hopefully get to Kiki in just a moment, but Alexis, you can certainly tell us about this venture. First of all, you have your ice cream parlor in Brooklyn, and then you decide, hey, I want to expand. Rwanda. It happened just that simple, right?
Just that simply. And the next day, we got up and running, and we were good to go. Actually, I can't even really take credit for it. It was Kiki's idea. She happened to meet my business partner, who in her past life was an actor. And Kiki is this incredible playwright, poet, artist of all kinds. And when she met Jenny, my partner, and heard that Jenny owned an ice cream business, this light bulb went off. And she said, do you think you could come to Rwanda and work with a group of women that I work with there and help them open their own ice cream shop?
What were you thinking?
I was thinking, well, that's a peculiar idea. I like it.
Did you know where Rwanda, could you point Rwanda out on the map?
I could, actually. I lived for a few years in Southern Africa, so
Okay.
I'm familiar with the layout of the continent and have some basic geography knowledge of the continent. But so I said, well, I'm intrigued, but why? What was her reasoning? And Kiki is far more articulate than I am when it comes to this, but she laid out what we felt was a very compelling argument. Number one, first and foremost, she said it would be an opportunity for local women to gain these valuable skills and to build something together and to create a business together that hopefully will last for many, many years and be a source of reliable income for them. Most of them stopped school around 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Opportunities for jobs are limited, very limited, if they exist at all for them. And so this was really kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. So number one, we like that idea. Number two, she felt it was an opportunity to support local farmers and local producers, which is something that we're very proud and excited about doing here in Brooklyn. And number three, and perhaps most importantly in Kiki's mind, was she felt an ice cream shop was a way to bring her community together. People are still very much healing from the genocide that occurred in 1994, and she wanted a place that was simple, that was happy, that was welcoming, so that people from both sides of the conflict could come together and start to heal together as a community.
Were you afraid going over there and getting involved in business in Rwanda? Because the first thing that comes to mind for me is, oh my goodness, like what about safety?
Yeah, well, the political turmoil had completely died down. There are a few flare-ups here and there, but for the most part, it's very safe. And the government that's in place is really reputable. They're doing a fantastic job. They have a very progressive vision for the country. So I wasn't worried about the political kind of threats or challenges. I was more interested or more concerned about the business challenges. You know, starting a business in New York City is also very difficult. But in Rwanda, it's a landlocked country. It has very few resources for a lot of the supplies that we are going to be needing. So that was more daunting to me than any kind of political strife.
Alexis, 90% of Rwanda does not have access to electricity. Infrastructure-wise, how did you pull this off?
A little bit of luck, a little bit of ingenuity. They do have, electricity is available. It's just normally out of the price, out of reach price-wise for the normal consumer. So there are other businesses and there are shops and things that do have electric. So we just had to build that into our budget, and now we're actually trying to raise more money to get a backup generator so that we can weather these power outages, which do happen pretty often.
And speaking of raising money, so how did you raise the $80,000 to start the business?
Well, we were really lucky in the beginning. The news kind of got out somehow, and it's an interesting story, I think. I'm biased, but I think it's pretty interesting. It was just this novel idea of an ice cream shop in Rwanda. And so it got a lot of attention, and people came out of the woodworks wanting to support it. So We had a lot of donations that came in just from individuals. We got some grant money, and through our own business channels, kind of tapped into some of our resources and got volunteers and got things donated. And so we just kind of pieced it together. It took us about a year, but finally we did it and opened the shop in 2010.
I can only imagine that it must have been a really exciting experience to, share something that you're already so passionate about with the women in the community of Rwanda. Can you talk a little bit about some of the stories that you heard or some of the expressions and faces that you, because at the same time you're also doing something that's so new and it's such a novelty for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, as you mentioned, most of Rwandans don't have electricity, so that obviously means they don't have a lot of access at home to ice cream or anything cold for that matter. So it was very interesting to witness people trying ice cream for the very first time. Unless you're here in the States with a very small child, you're not going to get that opportunity very often. So it was really remarkable.
Did they like it overall?
They did, yes. One lady asked me, does it have to be so cold? I said, yes, it absolutely does. But after the first few bites, they started to get used to the different sensation and they completely fell in love. So it was so fun to watch the kind of amused surprise and then settle into this ecstasy of ice cream. It was really gratifying.
And with this participation, you also have women who are obviously asserting themselves, finding their independence. What kind of impact have you been able to bear witness in terms of what it's done to the community?
Well, on a bigger scale, I've seen one of our employees, she was able to go back to the land where her family lived when she was a younger child, pre-genocide. She went back, she purchased a little plot of land, was able to build a house for herself, which was pretty massive. Even in the beginning, we set them up with bank accounts, something that they had never had. Not only checking accounts, but savings accounts. And they all decided on portions of their paychecks that they wanted to devote to savings. So even that small thing, in our culture, it's like, who doesn't have a savings account? Right. But there it was pretty monumental. It's changing the whole mindset, getting to think, I don't just have to survive, I get to actually plan for the future. I get to think about, what do I want out of this life of mine? I'm not just a caretaker. I'm not just a hair braider. I could be more. I could go back to school. I could build my own home. I could do all sorts of things. And so
you opened up a whole new world to them. I can't say thank you enough for sharing your story, and a bigger thank you for bringing that ice cream. That will not last long. All right, Alexis, and all the good luck and well wishes to your Sweet Dreams operation also in Rwanda.
Thank you so much.
And you are watching Our Take.
Basketball, it's a numbers game. But just listen to these numbers.
1 in 3 adults in this country are at risk of developing diabetes.
1 in 3. Just think about what that looks like in here. Our families, our friends,
our fans.
Let's change those numbers.
Learn your risk factors for diabetes.
Go to dribble2stopdiabetes.com and take the risk test.
It's fast, free, and easy.
Remember, your health depends on you. To learn more, go to dribble2stopdiabetes.com.
Bigger, stronger, and more domineering than any other. Elephants are the centers of the animal kingdom, but unfortunately today, they're under attack. Tens of thousands are being killed each year just for their ivory. So please support conservation and never buy products made from ivory, because when the buying stops, the killing can too.
Two-thirds of the earth is water. Can you swim?
next guest, in his blog about family, ministry, and worship, shared a true story about his family's visit to Walmart one day, a visit that would lead to a purchase of a doll that most would not have readily paired with his young daughter. Pastor Travis Agnew joins us from Greenwood, South Carolina, where he is worship pastor at Northside Baptist Church. And with me in studio is clinical social worker Natanya Kramer. Thank you to you both, Pastor Travis as well as Natanya. But Travis, I want you to tell me about your story titled My White Daughter's Black Baby Doll.
Our 3 kids to Walmart the other day. We have 2 5-year-olds. One of them is white, one of them is black, and we have a younger daughter, Gloria, who is 1. And as they were going through the toy section, my wife decided to stroll them through. And what happened was she started reaching out for a baby doll and really trying to get a hold of it. And as my wife kept putting different baby dolls in front of her, she wanted the black baby doll more than any. And being a white girl, it was sort of a lot of people were staring at this situation. And she just locked onto this baby doll, so much so we had to pry it out of her hand just so that we could check out with the doll. And she has gotten to where she loves that baby doll to death, and so much so that many people were staring at my wife and our 3 children as they were going through Walmart thinking, what in the world is going on with this family? But she absolutely adores this, and the only time that I'll ever have problems with my little daughter is if I try to take that baby doll out of her hands.
So, Pastor, what I understand, when I was reading the backdrop of your story, so there's transracial adoption. So your son in hearing that story, I mean, it is beautiful in an ideal world that race would not be an issue, but in fact it is. So how is it that you're addressing bringing your son, your black son, into it? Like, do you place a direct emphasis on immersing him in black culture, or do you kind of step back and are looking at this more as if the human race, he's a member of the human race?
Sure. Well, as a pastor, as a believer in Jesus Christ, I believe that what the gospel does is it takes different people groups and different races and brings them together as one and unites us. And so for us, when we decided on a process of adoption, we looked at where one of the greatest needs was in the world, and we decided to jump in. And so with us, for our family, we just want our children to learn. And coming from the Bible Belt in the South, a lot of people grew up with stereotypes, prejudices, different racial stereotypes. And we just think it's great that our children can look at their brothers and sisters and realize that there is no difference. And so a lot of that means that the friends that you have, the people that you're a part of in the family, the people that are at your church or at your gym, you look at yourself, or even the books and the toys that you have. Are they all just one race that you're looking at? And so for us, we believe that while race is a very important issue, it's not the most important issue, and it shouldn't definitely alienate people from each other.
And I hear you on that. This is just the topic that's very close to my heart, because I was raised by a white family who, my father, being a Baha'i, embraced the religion's principles of racial unity, of having a universal consciousness. So they purposely didn't want me to feel different than my white siblings. And so I grew up without any access, any immersion in black culture. As a matter of fact, they hid my racial identity from me until I was 14 years old, because they didn't want me to feel different. But I still experienced a tremendous amount of racism without any of the tools that I could have received from parents had they acknowledged what really does happen in society. Because I think that there's obviously what we hope for, and then there is what is. And we, if we're going to be healthy, obviously need to operate in reality versus the ideal situation.
And Natanya, what we're hearing from Pastor Travis is really heartwarming and is touching. And as we look at the photos of him and his family, what isn't there to like about it? It's so beautiful. But there's so much more to that when you have a family in which races are not the same, yet those on the outside looking in are certainly seeing that, even if you as the parent choose not to teach that to your children.
Absolutely. I would say it's an issue for all white families, all families of color, and trans-racially unified families, that the reality is we are in a system and a structure in the United States where we've inherited intergenerationally a racist, institutionally racist, and also culturally and often individually racist system. And so what happens is when young children are first coming into the world, they're inundated with messages through experiences they have with family members, with friends, but also, of course, with the media, their very first school experiences. We know from the research that race and ethnicity has a profound impact and is central to the social knowledge that children are developing very early in life. As soon as 6 months, they're already able to distinguish between different races. And then by preschool, there are many, many studies really looking at the ways in which young children are actually taking in messages about racial differences and acting them out in their play, and then in how they're perceiving other people in the world. And so I think the story that Pastor Travis shared is really heartwarming and also a perfect example that we are not in a colorblind world, and young children are actually understanding those differences.
So what happens for you when you have a family you're working with a family that is transracially unified, as you just said? What advice do you give to parents who adopt children of a different race? Do you say, okay, look, this is a prescription that I think will help your family come together, not just emotionally, but also, preparing everyone for life within and outside the color lines?
I think the best advice I give to families is that despite any discomfort we may have as parents speaking with children when issues come up, when a statement is made that might be considered offensive, that it's crucial to actually open up the space for children to express their understandings and concerns, and to have really authentic dialogue with young children right off the start about what it means to be in a racially constructed society and how to really work to have a more fair and just world. So really just having the conversations and talking about race is most crucial.
It starts with the conversation.
Absolutely.
Or in Pastor Travis's case, it starts with a very touching blog post about your story. Thank you so much, Pastor Travis Agnew, joining us today from South Carolina, sharing the story of your family. And also thank you, Natanya, for sharing some really insightful information about this, because I think sometimes when we look at diverse families, we don't see all of the various nuanced layers that are there to it. And also thank you, Silai Abrams, for joining me as guest co-host. I certainly do hope that you will come back again and join me out here on the hot seat again.
I look forward to coming.
All right, wonderful. And thank you. You are watching Our Take. Keep it right here. I'm not going away quite yet.
24 seconds. That's what you get to make it happen. You can run the break, find the big man inside, or swing it out and hit the 3. Grab the board, and you get a new 24, just like that. But unfortunately, for endangered animals, there's no reset. Many are now facing extinction. And when their clock runs out, they're gone forever. So please, support conservation and never buy products made from these animals. There's no more time to waste.
I wonder why anyone would do that to themselves. We all need air to breathe, to live, and so does the earth, but we're choking it with plastic bags. Let's stop using plastic bags and give the earth a chance to breathe. Refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle.
Ndingululu Chumsila, mna ndingumama owasindayo kwi-cancer, i-cancer eyayisisibelekweni. Thina bantu, imistake yethu apha ikhoyo, kwawuthiwa umntu une-cancer, simjongela uba laa mntu ngomso uzosweleka. Andizange ndibe nabunzima kakhulu, ngoba into ebangela uba nditsho, eyam yabhaqwa msinyane, ngoba into enyanzelekileyo kuba ube nethemba xa kuthiwa unento. Isapoti endayifumanayo kumyeni wam, kubantwana bam, nefamily yam yonke. Eyona nto ndandinayo mna entliziyweni yam kukuba okusalayo nam ndizophila ndifane nabanye abantu.
Lo myalezo niwuphathelwe i-JSI and Livestrong Cancer Anti-Stigma Initiative.
It's time now to go from our take to your take. I've been asking you to join me online throughout the show because I want to hear from you. So let's go to Twitter and Facebook to find out what you have been saying. At Hillary Crosley at Our Take Arise TV, Hillary Crosley says, I am less concerned with the jury's gender as much as there's not one black person on the jury. Problem. Also, another tweet, this one coming from Diva in the City. The show is awesome. Ooh, I love that tweet. Love the interaction and social media contributions. That coming to us from Diva and the City. I really like that. I think we should hold that up just a second longer. I like that one. Thank you, Diva. Another tweet coming from Raising Great Men. This has been a powerful and insightful hour. So glad that your show addresses great topics. And thank you so much for those words of confidence and encouragement. Well, today we leave you with Our World video. And we're actually going back to Rwanda to listen to an all-female Rwandan drum group. Take a listen. All right, ladies, rock the house. That coming to us from Rwanda, an all-female drum group. Well, thank you for joining me on Our Take. I am online. I'm on Facebook and Twitter. See you back here, same time, same place on Tuesday, and have a great, great day. We leave you with the sounds of our all-female Rwandan drum group.